This is a production of Cornell University.
Hello, my name is Kensy Rodriguez. I am a Ph.D. student at Cornell, and I am with
Steve Reiners, a horticulture professor and statewide vegetable specialist.
Today we'll talk about pollination. So, Steve, we've talked about pollination in watermelon and what that can do to that, but are there other effects of like pollination in other cucurbit crops and how that affect the fruit of the plant?
Sure. So this is a great example. This is cucumber. And you can see in this hand, I've got a cucumber very normally shaped. This is what you'd want. Could grow maybe a couple more days before we would typically harvest it, but it would be fine right now. And then you look at this one. This is from the same plant, and this one is very crooked as compared to that. And the reason why is that is a pollination issue. Some bees did get over, move some pollen from the male flower to the female flower, and there was probably enough to just get the fruit set and for it to start to grow, but we didn't have nice uniformity with the pollen in there, so there's parts of it that weren't sort of fertilized. So that's what's leading to, so if we cut this open later on when the seeds develop, what we'd see is in the normal parts, the seeds would be normal and large, and in here there probably wouldn't be any seeds. Now for a home gardener, these are fine to eat, not a problem at all. Taste would be just like a cucumber, but if you're a commercial grower, you'd have a really hard time trying to grow that. And this pollination issue that we see, another very common question we get from gardeners is they've read somewhere that, again, with the bees out in a cucurbit field, they can move the pollen from one plant to another. What happens when they move that pollen from a cucumber to a melon or from a melon to a squash? Will that cross? And then they might see something in their garden this year that looks odd, and they think it was because of the cross. But let's talk about that. First off, if in cucurbits, within pumpkins and squash, winter squash, there can be some cross-pollination that can occur, but it's impossible. And I'll repeat that again, it's impossible for a cucumber to cross with a melon, or a melon to cross with a squash, or for a pumpkin to cross with a watermelon. It just cannot happen in nature at all. So usually, when you do see maybe a zucchini that crosses with a pumpkin, you won't see that change that year. It will only be if you save the seeds. And where this can happen sometimes is people are cleaning out their gardens in the fall, and they'll throw their old rotting squash and things like that in the compost pile, and then they get a volunteer plant the following year, and it flowers and it produces a fruit that looks a little bit like a squash, or pumpkin might look a little bit like a zucchini. Sometimes we call them squampkins, so the combination. But again, it was from the seed. It will not happen. You will not see the effects of that cross that first year when it happens, because what you're seeing here, what the outside of this is all maternal tissue, so it should be whatever you planted. The seeds is where the genetics have changed. So if you see that in something you planted this year and you say, yeah, but I planted the seed and I know it was a cucumber and it's come out weird, it's possible that there was a little mix-up at the seed company, or maybe a mix-up when you were planting it themselves and you put the wrong seed in. But again, you won't see that unless you hold on to those seeds for a year and plant them out the following year.
Stephen, just to conclude, so even if I see bees in my field, that doesn't mean that all the flowers are going to get like completely pollinated to get a good fruit, right?
Yeah, it actually takes, I think they've done some work in watermelons where they think it might take anywhere from 10 to 15 bee visits to move enough pollen over to that flower. So even though you think, well, there's bees there, you might even bring bees out. A lot of growers will bring bees out into their fields, but they might go to other places where they prefer the pollen source. So yeah, so just because you see the bees, you want to see the bees, but there's no guarantee that they're as active as they should in your cucurbit field.
Yeah, that's very important to know. So we just learned about pollination, how the fruit can be misshapen, and also some advices on like how to check when you have a cross, but you know that you won't have it in the first season if you have your crop in the field.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.